Welcome to our Thirst for Knowledge video about Windows Server 2019 Storage Migration Service. My name is Manfred Helber. I'm a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Cloud and Data Center, and my focus is Windows Server and all the topics in there like storage spaces, direct, software-defined networking, Hyper-V for sure. And we are presenting a lot of these topics in our Windows Business Solution Club community. If you want to join the community, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. Actually, a lot of our content is in German language, but we started with this video series based on Windows Server 2019 to record all the videos also in English language. And so you will also find the information about the published videos about Windows Server 2019 topics in the Windows Business Solution Club channel in the future. Storage Migration Service is a new feature in Windows Server 2019. The Storage Migration Service allows us to migrate file services, so SMB shares from 2003, 2008, 2012, 2016, and 2019 on premises via the Storage Migration Service with all the data, all the configuration, the access control lists, the permissions, and everything is there to a new platform, maybe to Azure, maybe to on-premises Windows servers. The target can be Windows Server 2012 R2, 2016 or 2019. The green bar in the middle of the screen, the storage migration service, is provided by Windows Server 2019. The interesting thing is that storage migration service is included in every Windows Server 2019 edition. So it ships with Windows Server 2019 and it has no additional limit. So it's in the server. It can be used to migrate an older file server and previous version of Windows Server to the 3 latest versions. These are the supported versions as a target. So the management, we will see this in several live demos, is done by Windows Admin Center in an intuitive graphical interface. And under the cover, we have PowerShell. So everything is done via PowerShell, but the interface via where we do the configuration is Windows Admin Center. So for those that don't know Windows Admin Center, it's a web-based, locally installed management interface. So we use a web browser to configure everything, and we will see this in the live demos later. It's really very, very easy to handle. The first thing when we start with Windows Admin Center and the Storage Migration Service, we create a job. So the Storage Migration Services job is responsible for the inventory on the servers, the data transfer, and the cutover. So these are the 3 phases of Storage Migration Service. In the inventory, the Storage Migration Service job discovers the configuration and the data on the source server. In the transfer part, the data is copied, the shares are transferred, the security settings are transferred. And in the cutover, we transfer the IP address, the name of the server, and the old server is renamed and the old server receives a new IP address, but it remains in the Active Directory domain, so we can decide to turn off the old server, remove the server, or maybe reuse it for another task in the domain environment. So the inventory, the first important step in storage migration service, is absolutely passive. We don't need any agent on the source server. And the inventory runs from the Windows Server 2019 orchestrator. So the orchestrator is a component we install on Windows Server 2019. And this is the part that is responsible for doing the inventory. So first of all, we create the job. This is the green bottom here. Then we have the job step, including the volume scan, the configuration is scanned, the number of files, the sizes, the properties are scanned, and then we are ready for the transfer. So at the red sign here, at the red point, we have the situation that we are ready to go to the next step to transfer the data. In the inventory step, we have the situation that our storage migration service server with the proxy service is responsible to gather all the informations from the previous servers. This can be one server, this can be several servers. So we can do the inventory on several source servers within one job. And for sure, we can create several jobs to run it on several servers. So we can scale it from one source to a lot of source servers with the storage migration service. On the source server, we need some, let's say, access rights. We need some firewall configuration. So we need file and print sharing, SMB in. We need the netlog on service. We need the Windows management instrumentation, DCOM in, and WMI in. So these are the requirements on the source server. The important thing is a default installation of Windows Server already has this requirements pre-configured. I have installed Windows Server 2008 R2 and I didn't change anything on the server. So I installed 2008 R2 as a source server. So this is my old one. I added this server to the domain. I created some file shares and I used this server for several months as file server. And now I want to migrate this server to the latest version of Windows Server. So I want to migrate to Windows Server 2019. The first step is the inventory. Let's have a look at this in a short live demo. So what we here see in the live demo environment, I have a Windows Admin Center console. This is this new web-based management interface. I have the installation of the Windows Admin Center on a local server in my environment, and I'm accessing the Windows Admin Center via the Edge web browser. This is the actual situation. And here I have a machine. It's the D01- SMS, the storage migration service machine. So this is a Windows Server 2019 machine. This is a default installation of Windows Server 2019. And what I already prepared in roles and features, I already installed the storage migration service. This is not the default situation. By default, this is not installed, but it's easy to handle. I prepared it because this needs a few minutes to finish the setup. So I already prepared the installation of storage migration service and the storage migration service proxy. This has to be done manually. So you select these two features, click on install, and then they are installed. And now I'm able to launch the storage migration service console. And we will see I already have some jobs here that were run in this environment. First, the storage migration service introduces what's possible with the storage migration service. So we can create a job and inventory our servers. We can transfer the data from the old servers and then cut over to the new servers. So in the list, I can see I've already three jobs that are configured here, and I want to run a new job now. So we create a new job, and the job is the storage migration service job 04. And the 04 job starts with an inventory. First of all, I need some credentials for the source server. So this is a user account that needs administrative access to the source server. So I'm using my administrator here. This can also be a local administrator on the source server. And then I'm adding a device to scan. This can be several devices. We can see this is a long list here, so we can add 1, 2, we can add 5 or 10 servers. I want to add a device, and my device name, this is the Windows computer name, is D0-FS0, sorry, not 0, 21. It's the file server 21. This is my old server. So the first thing I have to do, I have to start a scan. The scan checks if the source server is available, if my user credentials have the necessary rights, if the ports are open I will need, how many files are there, how many file shares, how many volumes are there. This is done by this initial scan. So there can be different results, maybe a success, then I know the server was accessible and the storage migration server could get the required data. If there's a state failed, I can click on it and check what happened, what's the situation, why couldn't I access the source server, and maybe I don't have the necessary rights to access the server. Maybe I have a typo in my password or username. Maybe the firewall blocks me. I will be able to find this out when I look into detail here. But I can see here everything is fine. I have a succeeded state. I have the situation that the file size is 8.9 gigabytes, nearly 3,000 files, 0 failed files, 0 failed folders. So it seems everything is fine here. On the bottom of the page, we can see shares. I have 3 of them. We have the network adapters. I can check the configuration. For example, I will see this is a Windows Server 2008 R2 data center installation on the source server, the network adapters with the configuration and the volumes. So I will see, okay, the source server has 3 volumes and system volume and C and E where we have the data there. Okay, so this was the inventory step. So when we finished with the inventory, we can proceed to the transfer. In the transfer, we map the destinations because maybe my source server has a drive D, maybe the destination server has a drive F where I want to put the data, or volume F. These are not only drive, this can also be volumes in a SAN solution or in a storage spaces direct. We can map volumes, so skip shares, include sources. We can configure how often storage migration service should try to retry a transfer. We can configure the validation attributes. Then we are ready for the cutover. In the transfer, we have the situation we copy data between nodes via SMB. It's multi-threaded and multi-server, so we can have up to 10 copy threads per node. This is the default value. The transfers are serialized by server in a job, and we can have many servers per job. We have seen this long list, so we can add additionals. Security is scanned, and we have options like retry, multipass, and so on. Now it's important to know which version of Windows Server the target operates. So if the transfer target is a Windows Server 2019, the transfer works like this. So we have our storage migration service server in the middle of the slide. So here we have our storage migration service machine, and we have a data transfer directly from the source machines to the target machines. So the storage migration service server is only responsible for telling the source and the target what to do. In the target, we need file and printer sharing, netlog on, DCOM, we already mentioned this, and WMI in. It's the same, we had the same requirement we had in the source, but we don't need a lot of resources on the SMS server because the whole data transfer is done directly between the nodes. So let's have a look at the transfer, how it works with a Windows Server 2019 target in the next step in the live demo. So we finished the inventory in the live demo, and now I want to proceed with the data transfer. So we need again credentials. These are the credentials that are used to authenticate at the target server. This is my domain and the user, the password, then we have a destination device. For example, I will use the MSMS target 2. This device is scanned, so storage migration service checks if the device is there. If I can access the device, I will see, okay, the destination device has volumes E and F, so I can decide which volume I want to choose. Maybe I want to remap the volume E to the volume F. I can decide which shares should be transferred. Maybe I won't transfer the share 1. If I have a lot of shares, I can search for them here, so it's really easy to handle. Next step is to adjust the settings. So we will check if, or we can configure how many retries will be done, what is the delay between the retries, what is the maximum duration. We can configure a validation method. So for example, in checksum that's created here. I don't want to preserve the destination files, so I want to override them if they are already there. This is specific to my environment. It depends to your requirements in your environment. Then I want to validate if these settings would be usable. So again, a pass here. When I click on it, I can read the destination exists, the SMB connection works, the used credentials work, the credentials have administrative privileges. I can check if the destination is unique, the source volume exists, the target volume exists, and so on. This is all checked by this validation here. Next step is to start the transfer. In the transfer, the data is transferred from the source server to the target server. I will start the transfer here. And in the details, the SMB details, I will see what happens. The first share is already transferred. The second one is not started yet. And for sure, if you have a file server with not, let's say 10 gigabytes, like in my live demo, but maybe 1 terabyte or 10 or 20 terabytes, this will need additional time because depending on the performance of your storage on the source and the target, and depending on your network limitations, you will need maybe hours or maybe even days till the data is transferred. The important thing is that we can run additional delta transfers. So if the first huge amount of data needs several hours or days, then you will continue with a delta transfer, and then you will only have a small delta between source and destination because the users still work on the source, they change things. And then in the cutover, we have the situation that the roles change. So then we switch from the old machine to the new machine. So the transfer succeeded. Everything is fine. I can see here succeed. I can see the succeed in the SMB details. We can see the transfer details here for the machine. And there's an error log and a transfer log. The error log should be empty because I have no errors. If I have errors in the error log, I can see which files were not transferred, where I had errors, and I can work on it to fix this. So what happens if our target is not Windows Server 2019? So let's say our target server is Windows Server 2012 R2 or 2016. Then it works like this. Our storage migration server, we can see now on the slide, has still to be a Windows Server 2019. This is important to know because storage migration service is a new feature. It's not there in the previous versions. Our older file servers on the left-hand side can be servers starting with Server 2003. And our target servers on the right-hand side, this is Windows Server 2012 R2, 2016 or 2019. In this specific scenario, the target servers are 2012 R2 or 2016. Now the data transfer is handled via the storage migration service server. So now it's important to know we need additional resources on the storage migration service server, because if we have limited network capacity there, or limited storage capacity, or limited CPU power, then the storage migration service server will be our limitation factor. So this server will be responsible for the whole transfer, and it's also handled via this server. So it's important to add some additional resources to the storage migration service server in this scenario. So my recommendation would be to migrate to Windows Server 2019 because it's the latest Windows Server version. We have a lot of great functionality. We have additional tiering options. We have additional deduplication options. And we have the latest and longest supported version, but from the technical perspective, it's also possible to migrate to 2012 R2 or 2016. So the third step is the cutover. In the cutover, we map the networks, the IP, the name, we configure a max duration, a validation is done, and the cutover completes the job. So when the cutover was run, the job is completed and everything switched to the new server. So the old source is still there, but it's not used any longer. We have an read-only for the old source. We have a takeover of name and Active Directory, takeover of the network. And when we finished with the cutover, we have everything on the new machine, on the new physical or virtual machine, on a new operating system version, and it acts like if nothing ever had happened. So we do not have to reconfigure logon scripts. We do not have to adjust network paths. We do not have to change drive mappings. Everything works like this has never changed. We have the same server name, the same IP address, the same shares, and also the full transfer of the access control list. So the cutover is be possible to do it between source and target server. So we can switch from an old machine to a new machine. And then we can remove the old servers, the previous server versions, the older hardware. It's also possible, interesting for a smaller environment, to only have the source and the storage migration server. So it's also possible to move to this machine that handles the storage migration. And then we have the same situation. So the storage migration services server can also be the target. This is interesting for a smaller environment. The previous scenarios we have seen will for sure be the situation if we have a larger environment with several sources and several target servers. So let's have a live demo on the cutover. We finished the transfer. We didn't see any errors. Everything was fine. And now we can proceed to the cutover step. First of all, we need credentials. We need credentials that are allowed to rename the computer, to rename the new computer. So again, administrative credentials. Then we get some information what will happen. So first of all, we have to care about the network. The source server has a network adapter and an IP address. I can tell the configuration which network adapter on the target should have the IP address of the source server. The source server will receive a new IP address via DHCP. The source server will get a new randomly generated computer name. What does this mean? When we go further on to the next step, we have the cutover time. This can be configured depending on your specific scenario. What will be the timeout for the cutover? And then we have the validation. And here we can see what will happen. The source server actually has the Windows computer name D01-FS21. The source device new name will be a WIN-L40M0-9EJ9Q. This is a randomly generated name, so the old server is renamed. The destination device original name is D01-SMS-target2, and the destination device new name will be D0-FS21. So the destination server will have the file server's name when we finished with the migration, and the file server's IP address, and all the shares. But on a new machine, new hardware or virtual machine, and on a new operating system, usually the latest version we will use there. Great thing. So when we check this and we started the validation, so the validation is in all the major steps here so that we can be sure that it will work. You will see pass again. We can see, okay, it tests if there are the necessary access rights on the source and destination computer, if the credentials are fine, if we have the matching policies there, if we have enough space and so on, if everything is fine. The space was tested in the previous step. This was wrong, but we check if the name can be changed and so on. And then we can start with the cutover. This is the last step. Start the cutover, and now the old server changes to the new server. The data is already transferred. The IP address will be transferred now. The name will be transferred now. The old server will be renamed. Now everything will run on the new machine. So in the live demos, we have seen the inventory, the transfer, and now the cutover. So let's talk a little bit about the scale and validated values. So actually, we have already tested a 50,000 share source. So this is not a limit, but this is what's actually tested. 100 simultaneous transfer jobs, 60 networks per machine, so we can use several networks. There's no data size limit, so the only limitation is your capacity of your target server and of your storage migration service server. We have up to 512 proxy copy threads that are supported, so it's really, really powerful. The vision of storage migration services to not only focus on the Windows Server sources. So we mentioned we have a support for 2003, 2008, 2012, 2016, and the next versions, 2019 and so on, but also to support third-party storage operating systems or storage systems, to support other platforms, um, to extend the job capabilities, and to add additional targets like additional cloud-based targets, but always also on premises. So this is the vision of storage migration service. This is not there today. Today we have the ability to use these systems we can see here in the middle section, but storage migration service is really, really very powerful, and this is what's on the planned roadmap for the next versions. We often get questions about additional capabilities of storage migration service. And what's important to always remember, the name is storage migration service. This is not a tool for migrating Active Directory. This is not a tool for migrating applications or printers or things like this. This is always storage migration. So folders, files in shares, in volumes, and configuration of the storage server. We have other tools to migrate Active Directory. Usually we install the newer version of the domain controller in an existing domain. We have other tools to migrate applications. We have cluster rolling upgrades for cluster migration and so on. This is not task of the storage migration service, and this is also not part of the vision. It's not the part to add additional features besides the storage capabilities. But for storage, this should or will be the central tool in the next versions. When we talk about migration, it's helpful to get some support, and a source where we get detailed information about migrating to the latest Windows Server versions is the Windows Server Upgrade Server via aka.ms/upgrade center. You have access to this web page we can see in the screenshot, and there we select first our source server version, and then we select our target server version. So this is the selection of the source, 2008 R2, 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, and then we select our target, so for example 2016 or 2019. Then we get recommendations, additional links, tools that support us to be successful in migrating to the latest Windows Server version. We will create additional videos about features in Windows Server 2019. This was the video about the storage migration service. We will record videos about Storage Spaces Direct, Windows Admin Center, security capabilities, and so on. So feel free to contact us via our LinkedIn Windows Business Solution Club news channel. Feel free to use our YouTube channel to see what's published new. And thank you very much for your time, for your interest in storage migration service. Enjoy testing it. It's already available to test it. You can use it in the technical preview, or you can use it in the final bits and bytes. The Windows Admin Center I used for the demonstration is public available, so we can download it. And so I say thank you for your time, and feel free to test it, enjoy test storage migration service, and migrate a lot of file servers to the latest version. Bye.